Sorry I keep touching my hair. I just blow dried it and there are like little flyaway pieces that are in my eyes and they're driving me really nuts. So please ignore me. I'm trying to ignore me. Hey friends, it's Jordan and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about the final books that I read in 2021. I read a total of I think 31 or 32 books this year, so nothing like I've read in past years, but that is okay. We are not worrying about it. I also didn't read like any good books this year, which is similar to previous years because as I mentioned before, I don't know my reading tastes anymore. I don't know what I like in books. I don't know how to tell what I'm going to like in a book. And it's just all very stressful. This is going to be the last installment in my recent reads for 2021. There are 12 books left for me to talk about for the year. And so rather than I thought doing like two separate videos and making it go too far into 2022, I would just wrap up the 12 in this video because that felt like it made more sense to me. So the first book we're going to be talking about today is An Absolutely Remarkable Thing by Hank Green, which is the first in the Carl's duology. We chose to read this book for the House Salt Book Club pick. This is a really fun first contact story. It reminded me a lot of one of my other favorite books, which is Sleeping Giants by Sylvain Neuvel. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to reach this. No, I'm not. Sleeping Giants by Sylvain Neuvel. Had I at any time since this book came out been told it was like a first contact story or heard anyone compare it to the Famous Files, I think I would have added this to my TBR immediately because that's one of my favorite series of all time. And the first book definitely reminded me a lot of it, with like these giant metal creatures showing up around the world and nobody knows where they came from, and we're following a main character who is trying to unearth their history and their origins and what they're doing on Earth, which is very similar to the Famous Files. There's also like a really huge internet aspect to the story. Our main character goes viral after posting a video with one of these giant metal statues. And there's a lot of discussion around fame and internet fame specifically and how that affects people. And it felt like it came from a really authentic place because Hank Green has had experience with this, obviously, in his life being one of the vlog brothers. There have been other books that I've read that deal with like YouTubers, and it just doesn't really ever feel like that person has ever been a YouTuber, let alone a virally famous YouTuber. It definitely feels like the first part of a larger story arc. Because of that, the first book isn't as super enjoyable as I want it to be because I did really enjoy the first book, but it's hard to talk about it because I was talking about the second one, so let's talk about the second one as well, which is A Beautifully Foolish Endeavor. We read this for book club too. There's really no other way to talk about the story because the two halves really feel like a complete whole, like you can't distinguish them really. I don't know, it just feels like one huge arc. And this second book really gets away from like that first contact idea, and the direction in which it goes with like the sci-fi elements is really lackluster in my opinion. I feel like there's just, it could have been so much more sci-fi. Like I wanted more space, I wanted more answers to the Carls, I wanted more like, where do they come from? Like, who are they? What do they want with Earth? And like that discussion never really became a thing. It's much more about like April May and her individual like relationship with the Carls and with fame and like what happens when it goes too far. And still really enjoyed the overall story, but I just liked the first one so much better than the second one. The first one I gave a 4 and then the second one I gave a 3. The next one that we're going to talk about is The Project by Courtney Summers, which is one of my most anticipated books of the year. It was on my most anticipated list. I really enjoyed Sadie by Courtney Summers, which was like a cult favorite a while back. And speaking of cults, this one is about a cult. And I was like, ooh, that sounds amazing. Like our main character, her sister mysteriously disappeared prior to the start of the novel, and she's been like looking for her ever since and trying to figure out what happened to her. And she finds out that she may have joined a cult. And so she's trying to rescue her from this cult. In the process of like researching it, because she's a journalist, and like getting ready to write this expose on this cult and like help save her sister, she becomes further immersed in that lifestyle, and it's a look at like what happens when a very well-meaning person goes too far with their research. Like what happens when you start to like believe the things that you were researching and you're no longer like an outside perspective, but you're becoming more entrenched in the society that you're studying. Like that's an interesting discussion. Overall, I just didn't really care for this book. It wasn't great. I don't have really any strong feelings towards it one way or the other. I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. I don't feel much about it. I don't ever think about this book. I didn't really feel that there were like too many fun twists and turns, which I think you should have as like a cult novel or like a book about cult. Like there wasn't really anything shocking or like surprising. It's something that I've found I'm struggling with a lot with like these YA thriller mystery like crime books. It's like I want more and I want them to like go further, but they're YA, so like they're not going to, and I need to just stop reading them and just read adult because they never go as far as I want them to. I felt like the ending was like super duh. Like it was a moment where I was like, this is really unfulfilling because I felt that this is where we were going the whole time. And I was really hoping that we weren't going here, and here we went anyway. And now I'm just upset about it. I did listen to this one on audiobook though, and I did enjoy the audio narration of it. I thought it was a very engaging audiobook. I liked the narrators and the way that it was told. I gave it a 2.5 out of 5 stars. It was meh at best. A book that I did really enjoy though was When No One Is Watching by Alyssa Cole, which is a thriller, a urban society thriller. We're following a main character who lives in a neighborhood that is being gentrified, and all of her neighbors that she's lived with her entire life are being run out of her town, and she's not sure where they're going, but they're just like disappearing. It's like in the night, another neighbor is just gone, and they're being replaced by these suburban white families that want like a trendy new neighborhood to live in. She befriends one of the new neighbors across the street. They start to uncover some secrets about the gentrification process of her neighborhood and what's really happening to her neighbors. And I just adored this book. It was so much fun. It went in directions that I did not see coming, and it surprised me. And it reminded me a little bit of Lock Every Door by Riley Sager with like a racial commentary twist to it. And this was just so good. I know Alyssa Cole typically writes romance. I've read quite a few of her romances. Well, 2, but whatever. And I'm so excited to see her do more of this because this was just such a good time. It's compared to Rear Window and Get Out. I haven't seen either of those movies, but if you like those things, you would probably really enjoy this. I listened to this on audiobook. The audiobook was also super engaging. I loved the narration and it kept me on the edge of my seat. So much fun. This was above and beyond a 5-star. Like I absolutely loved this one. So the next book that I read was A Court of Silver Flames by Sarah J. Maas. I loved this. No surprise there. I am a person who keeps Sarah J. Maas in her trash pocket. She's in my trash pocket. She's been there for years. This isn't something that like overwhelmingly recommend to people. Well, there's just other things out there that are better. You know, you can just read better things. This is her newest release. It is a chunky book. This is the Nesta and Cassian book that we've been waiting for what feels like a million years. It is the 4th full-length novel in the A Court of Thorns and Roses series. Almost forgot the title. It is post the giant war battle of A Court of War and Court of Wings and Ruin. Over there, I don't know why I keep looking over here. It's post-battle. So we're dealing with a lot of like the traumatic things that happened at the end of the book and how the main characters are dealing with their trauma and how they're handling it, because they're all handling it very differently and they were all impacted by that moment very differently, some more than others. And Nesta specifically is like really going through a lot in this book, and I just really loved this. I really enjoy Nesta as a main character. I've been looking forward to seeing her romance with Cassian forever. There's a couple new romances introduced in here that I can't wait to see more of in future books. No Shade gave this 5 stars. I really enjoyed it. So the next book that I read was Dune, the graphic novel, which is volume 1 by Brian Herbert's the adapter, but Frank Herbert is the one who obviously wrote Dune. So we chose Dune for our book club one of the months, these pieces of hair are going to drive me insane. I am so sorry. I just knew Dune wasn't for me. Like, I knew I wasn't going to be able to get through Dune. I knew I wasn't going to read it at all, but I still wanted to participate in the live show. So we kind of came to the agreement that if you consumed any media about Dune, you could come to the discussion. Most of the people in the group like didn't even finish the book. I only read a third of it via the graphic novel here. I really enjoyed the graphic novel. I thought that the artwork was beautiful. I thought that it was very easy to follow. I'm not like a huge graphic novel person. I don't know much about them or like what are things to look for as like a good versus bad graphic novel, but I enjoyed this. It was easily accessible to somebody who isn't a graphic novel reader. It made Dune like a palpable story. A lot of people in our discussion did not enjoy Dune. I really enjoyed it because I only had to read the first third of it, and this is like pretty accurately like cut with the movie. I think the movie just goes like a few scenes further. The artwork was really similar to the movie. It was very clear whoever worked on this had knowledge and access to the movie people because the artwork and the scenes were very similar, and it was a fun time. I actually enjoyed this. I would definitely read the sequels when they come out. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. Then I read The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood, which I read because Mari from Anias Marinas told me to read it and that I would love it. I did enjoy this book. Like, I wouldn't say I dislike it, but it wasn't what I was, everything I wanted it to be and more. Like, it was just fine. It was good. I get why other people like it. It is Raylo fan fiction or Adam Driver fan fiction, following these two main characters who work in academia, specifically like scientific academia. She, at the beginning of the novel, just like jumps this man, kisses him, and then that like sends the whole plot forward. Kind of fake dating to help further both of their respective lives. It was fine. It was good. There's a lot of tropes in here that I really enjoy. I love fake dating. I love like the grumpy sunshine trope. I like the one shared bed trope. Like, there's a lot of things going on here that I really like. But it was super slow burn, which I like slow burn, but I like a little bit more like banter, angsty slow burn. This was more of like, we're trying to convince you that we like each other, and we do like each other, but we're trying to convince you that we are, but we won't admit it. And I'm like, I just want more like angst. I want more like bickering. I want a little bit more tension between the two of them. So that being absent dropped my enjoyment of this just slightly, but I did enjoy it overall, and I'm excited to read future things by Ali Hazelwood. I give this a 4 out of 5 stars. Then I read Lore Olympus Volume 1. This is by Rachel Smith. We read this for book club again. I will link all of the book club discussions on the screen if you want to go watch any of them. This is a webtoon comic that's been traditionally published. It's like the first 25 issues or episodes of this webtoon comic. This is a Hades and Persephone story. It's been going on for like 4 years on webtoon, and it is super slow burn. But I really enjoyed this. The art style is gorgeous. It's stunning. There's so many different gods and goddesses and titans from Greek mythology. So if you are someone who likes Greek mythology, this would be a super fun read for you. And I'm excited to get to know the characters a little bit more. Like, I feel like we didn't really get a whole lot about them, being that it was only the first 25 out of like hundreds of issues. I don't really have a super firm like opinion on this because I didn't really feel like I read enough of it, but I do know that when the next bind up comes out, I will be continuing with this because I did have a good time and it was a lot of fun. I gave this a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Then I read Survive the Night by Riley Sager, which was his new release from this year, which I think everybody hates. I haven't heard like one good thing about this, but I thoroughly enjoyed it, which I feel like, of course I did, right? This takes place in the 90s, and we're following our main character, Charlie, who is fleeing college. And in the 90s, like Uber, cell phones, none of that stuff exists. So she is at a ride bulletin looking for a ride home. And she meets this guy, and they get in the car together and start to drive home. And while she's in the car with him, she starts to think that he might be her best friend's murderer. She's an unreliable narrator too. You don't really know if things that are happening are actually happening or not because she is unreliable. Like, yeah, maybe the ending has some like cheap twists and like some cheap gimmicks and stuff, and it's like not super well crafted. Like, it's not as good as Lock Every Door. But I loved this. I was so engaged in this book. I was so engrossed. I read it so quickly, and it was like just so much fun. I have such a hard time finding thrillers that I like to read them, but like I have a hard time finding ones that I like. And so this was just kept me on the edge of my seat. I didn't know what the hell was going on, like any time of the book. I didn't know who to trust, who to believe, all the different storylines that we were going off on. And I just found this to be super, super fun. And the ending was, yes, ridiculous, but I really enjoyed it. I gave it a 4.5 out of 5 stars. It is my second favorite Riley Sager book, and I've read all of his books but one. Next, I read These Vengeful Hearts by Catherine Lauren, and I read this for a project I was doing on Do I Like Things That I Think I Like. I'll link the blog on the screen of where I read 3 different YA murder mystery boarding school kind of style books to see if I actually like that thing that I think that I like. I talk about this really in depth in the vlog, so I'm not going to go too much into it here, but her sister was in a tragic accident at the hands of like a secret society within their high school. So our main character is trying to infiltrate the secret society to get revenge for her sister. It's fine. If you are in the YA age range, maybe this is what you're looking for. If you're an adult, this is probably not what you're looking for. You probably want an adult version of this, which is what I'm going to try to do next. I mean, it's appropriate for the audience of which it is geared to, which is not me, which probably makes sense why I didn't really enjoy it that much. So I feel bad saying that like I don't like this book and don't read it, but if you are an adult, probably not the book for you. And then our final house salt book for 2021 was Window Shopping by Tessa Bailey. None of us enjoyed. This is a very weird hodgepodge of a book. We are following our main character who just recently is released from prison, and she is wandering the streets of Manhattan one day. This man approaches her and tells her to apply to be the new window designer of his store, and so she does. Yes, she wants to be a window dresser. Yes, she just got out of prison. Yes, he hires her. Yes, there's a romance. Apparently this is like a very popular book talk book, and they compare it to Ted Lasso. So if you like Ted Lasso, this is essentially Ted Lasso fanfiction. It was self-published by the author, and she does publish a lot of like traditionally published things, but this one she's self-published, and it makes sense. Just a lot of questionable things that I just don't understand. There's like a lot that happens in a very small book. Like just a lot happens and nothing happens. And it takes place over 2 weeks. I couldn't get past the fact this takes place in 2021. Like this takes place this Christmas season. And I was like, we are still in a pandemic. And these characters don't know that. It detracted from my enjoyment. It should have just been a timeless time. Like it was just Christmas. We didn't need the year. The year was unnecessary. The year meant nothing to the story, but it detracted a whole lot. So I gave this 2.5 out of 5 stars. I did not enjoy this. I would not recommend. It is not good. There are better Christmas romances out there. And the final book that I read in 2021 was Snow in Love, which is 4 short stories that I've had for a million years on my shelf. I've had this book forever. We're following 4 different characters, 4 different couples as they're snow in love. I liked 2 of the stories, and then 2 I didn't really care for. I really liked Casey's story, which is the first one, and then Nick Stoned, which is the last one. Casey's takes place on a snowy road trip. That one is super fun. I love a road trip story. And then Nick's takes place in an airport, like during the scavenger hunt game, which is fun because it's a scavenger hunt game. That one feels significantly less Christmas and like less holiday-y, but the 2 that I really didn't care for have the more holiday vibes to them. I did enjoy 2. I was lukewarm about 1, and then the 3rd one I actively did not enjoy, so I gave this a total of 3 stars. I do think there are better Christmas things out there, but if you've been wanting to read this, I wouldn't say no. It's a fun time. It's fairly short. You could read it very quickly. And that is it. So those are all the books that I read in 2021. Not a great reading year. If you've read any of these books, please tell me in the comments down below what you thought of them. I would love to chat and discuss them. If you want to follow me anywhere else online, my Instagram and Twitter handles are on the screen now. The screen. My Instagram and Twitter handles are on the screen now. Thank you guys so much for watching. Until next time, I'll talk to you very soon. Bye!